everyone, welcome to The Caring View, the online social care chat show, a platform for everybody and to educate everybody. I'm Adam, if you don't know. I've not been around for the last 4 weeks. So hi Mark, hi Dawn, how are we?
Yes, we're good. We're good. Well, I am.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm okay. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, find that little bell so you're notified every time we put a video up, and all of the views expressed in tonight's show, which are only going to be fabulous views anyway, are of ourselves and not our respective companies. So, yes, I haven't been here, and it's not through choice. We have unfortunately just come out of our first outbreak at our care home. We've been going 20 months without any cases. We got one case, and by the end of the week we had 11. And it's been horrible. If I'm completely honest, it's been exhausting. Out of respect to our families, I won't go into it too much, but it's just been absolutely shattering. I'm just thankful everyone's had the vaccine, because I think things would have been a lot worse. And the hardest part has been staffing. People drop like flies. And if you've got COVID in your home, agencies don't want to help. So I've been doing 16 days straight, pretty much sleeping over at the home, working 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day, coming home, sleeping, going back into work. I think I went 3 days without eating at one point because you were just running around constantly. And we've always had admiration for people who've gone through this. Dawn, I've said to yourself in the past, how horrendous it must have been. And then to actually go through it yourself once you thought you'd escaped it, naively thinking, we've managed to go without. It's just been heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. You feel like a failure. You feel like you've not done enough. You feel like you've let everyone down, and it's really, really difficult. And then to come out of that and try and find the hope and the joy and go back to normal. You've gone from 16 days. For us, very lucky, we're only a small home. So the fact that the majority of the people contracted it in our home should mean that we're pretty safe for the foreseeable future. But to go from all of that high octane to then nothingness, we had a bereavement. One of our friends passed literally just before the outbreak. So my first day off after surviving this was a funeral, and I hadn't had time to process grief. And I know Dawn had phoned you crying down the phone saying, I just can't do this anymore, I don't know what I'm not supposed to be doing. Very, very difficult, and I really just want to say to anyone who's still going through this, because COVID still exists, homes are still going to go through it, you're not failing. The fact that you're still there doing what you do, and you're working hard to keep people safe is an absolute testament to the social care sector. And I think people who aren't aware of what's going on, I've been that busy, I've seldom had chance to watch TV. I've not watched Help yet with Jodie Comer and Stephen Graham. And I actually don't know whether I'm in a place where I could watch it at the moment, because it is still so raw, what we've been through. Well, people need to know that actually it might sound negative of saying that there's no help there, but the fact that we are saying there's no help there should wisen people up now to go, actually, things need to change. Because I can tell you now, the day after our outbreak finished, I had 3 agencies phone me saying, we can provide you 12-hour shifts every day this week if you need them. Where was that help 16 days ago? When I literally got into my car one day after working 3 days solid, hadn't eaten a dinner, literally sat in my car at 7 o'clock to come home in the evening, phone call, can't come in, I'm positive. Of course you are. Can we get an agency? No, you can't. Councils, don't get me wrong, they've been supportive, we've had good supportive chats, but there's no contingency. They actually said to me, have you tried asking the team to work extra? And no, I've never thought about asking my team to do extra shifts. The fact that this person's contracted for 24 hours and has worked 71 for me this week, I hadn't even thought about that. And the fact that we all just banded together and basically just worked solidly. Everyone had to isolate. It goes against every moral that I have to do with care. Had everyone tested positive, they would have all been in the same room together. But because we managed to keep some people negative, and they are still negative to this day, we've gone through the entire outbreak keeping them negative. So for my team, huge testament to all the hard work they've done to keep people safe. It's just been horrid, and I'm sorry I've not been here. I'm here now, and I just want people to know that if you are going through this, reach out. We can help you. We can talk to you. We've all been through this now. I'm part of the club, which is a sad club to be a part of, but the luck runs out. No matter how hard you work, no matter how many policies you've got in place and procedures and risk assessments. Heck, all of our residents have been going outside for the last 12 months almost. Going home, going out with families, we've had people visiting, hugging, close contact. We've never had it. The luck runs out, and we don't know how it works. We don't know how people are getting it and not showing symptoms, because the majority of our family didn't show any symptoms. So we don't know how it's got in. It's just got in. So you're not a failure. We are here to support you. It's part of what the Caring View is here for, is to raise this awareness. So, I think next week, I know we usually do this at the end of the show, but I really want to say this now. We are going to try and get in touch with people to come together next week on next week's show. And we can have a chat about this, and we can be positive about it. We can talk about our experiences, because people need to know what we've gone through. It's fantastic that finally they've done a dramatised social care focused show. And, from what I've heard, the majority of the reviews are quite positive about it. But there are real stories out there, and I think those real stories need to be heard as well. So, yeah, not the lightest start to a show we've ever done. I just wanted to get that out there, because I didn't want to dampen the amazing stuff we've got to talk about in this evening's show. But first off, have you all got fuel in your cars? Managed to get fuel?
I got fuel 10 o'clock last night. I was queuing, but yeah, no, I've got fuel. So yeah, we're quite lucky in the area that there's regular deliveries, but yeah, there's obviously not up and down the country, which is a shame. Frustrating that government won't prioritise care workers as essential for fuel, but yeah, I mean, hats off to our local BBC News team. They were right on it yesterday and today and tomorrow, getting coverage of care workers that don't have fuel and putting that across, obviously, the BBC News.
I'm kind of going to play devil's advocate a little bit there, Mark, because should it be down to the government? Should it not be down to Sainsbury's and Tesco's and Morrison's and BP and Esso, and they prioritise these people? Where has the clap gone from a year ago? It shouldn't be down to the government to put everything in. I'm sorry, no,
Yeah.
Not that clap. Stop. Can't we tell you're back? But where has that all gone? Shouldn't it be the supermarkets that are making these decisions? And shouldn't it be the garage owners and the petrol distributors who make these decisions? This infuriates me. It should be down to them. And, my disappointment is with these big firms who are making so much money out of everybody pumping fuel into their cars at the moment, yet they can't prioritise a social care worker going to do home calls. And I think I read somewhere that somebody was then going to assist somebody who was coming to the end of their life. And Morrison's were like, nah, I'm not doing it. So I don't actually think that's the government's responsibility. I think it's down to the individual companies. And I think they need to make that kind of priority.
See, some of the companies around here have prioritised care workers. They've said if you take your badge and a pay slip so that you can obviously evidence, then they'll prioritise. So I think that's one reason why care isn't affected so much kind of around where I live. But I know as you go wider afield, it obviously is. But
yeah, I mean, the local station to me, the only one that's had fuel the past few days, have actually put a spend limit on what you can spend on fuel, which I think is a good idea. And man, I did see somewhere in the news where someone was leaving a petrol pump free for emergency services. So, because they are vital and it is important that they get looked after. But these home carers, I mean, it's not even just home carers, care homes in rural areas which might not have the public transport required. These carers need to drive there. Managers need to drive there. And, we can all think about car sharing, but then it goes against COVID practices because you're sat in a car close to people constantly. It becomes very difficult. And I think it's a huge shame. And I'm with you on this, Dawn. If we're going to sit here and go to our government, you need to prioritise key workers over the fuel. We'll probably get the social care reform white paper before they actually lift a finger and try and sort something out along the lines of that. I know. You know, they're doing their hardest, they're doing their best, but this whole thing just seems like a manufactured crisis when actually there isn't a crisis. And I can't understand. I literally nipped to the shops the other day because I wanted to go get some cans of pop or something from Morrison's. But I wanted to go and get something from Morrison's, and I actually thought there'd been a crash. I hadn't heard about any of this. You know, it was like the apocalypse happening. I hadn't even clicked onto the news. And so I went straight home and I phoned my other half and I said, oh, God, there must have been a crash at Morrison's, can't get in. He went, no, there's a fuel crisis. What?
The strange thing is there are parts of the country that are like showing videos where there's like nobody at the forecourts. Like they've all got petrol, but there's just no queue. So it's obviously just certain parts. I think it's like, we love to be sheep, don't we, in England? So I think we all just see people queuing and like, oh, let's just join the queue and try and get some petrol as well. But I don't understand why it's gone on for so long. Surely the people that don't need fuel, that don't use their cars as often, where are they putting all this fuel? Like, why are the queues still so long? I don't get it. Like,
have you not seen what they're doing with their fuel? They're putting it in carrier bags.
Oh my gosh, that video is hilarious.
They're putting it in carrier bags and jugs and all sorts of things that they can just fit it in because they think it's going to go on for months and months and months. And if they carry on like that, it probably will.
Yeah.
But that's what they're doing with it.
In 3 weeks' time, we're going to have mass explosions around the country because people's bathtubs have been full of petrol, a bit like toilet roll. You know, they're going to have houses full of toilet roll and gasoline in 3 weeks' time. There's going to be mass explosions everywhere.
It's the price, though, isn't it? I don't think people realise what the price has gone up to while they're filling up. I mean, I paid just under £1.40 for a litre yesterday. I think when I went down to one of the offices today, they were saying they paid just under £2 a litre for petrol. And obviously last week it was like £1.20 something. So the prices are shooting through the roof. But I don't think people really kind of look at that when they're grabbing 40, 50, 60 pounds worth of fuel at a time. But
something proper sus about it.
I think it's just all a good old marketing trick, saying that they might run out, close a couple of stations, and all of a sudden, boom, everybody's buying petrol. But
one of my favourite theories is, because Lord loves the conspiracy theory, is the fact that obviously petrol has an expiry date, and they're like, well, we've done nothing through the lockdowns recently, so all the petrol's going to expire. So they said it's running out, so we can use up all that petrol that's going to go out a day. You don't know what to believe nowadays. Even the government is saying that it's been manufactured by the companies, isn't it? So even the government are saying this is absolutely ridiculous. Before we do get into the next show, there is also some other fantastic news. Dawn, are we sharing? Can we share? It's on Twitter.
Yeah.
But it's not on Facebook. It's not official. It's on Facebook.
No, it is on Facebook.
Oh,
is it on LinkedIn?
So I have started a new role with the Elsham Care Trust. So I am the new registered manager.
And tell us a bit about it. What do you do? What's the trust about?
So it's a wonderful place, actually. It was built on a pharmacist, from what I understand, a pharmacist's dream of a community helping a community. So apparently he used to deliver people's medication and then would notice that this lady needed help putting a fire on, or somebody else needed help with something else. So he'd knock on the neighbours' doors, and he'd knock 2 doors down and say, did you know she needs some help? Maybe you can help. And that's kind of how it was built upon. And he developed this wonderful trust in respect of the community helping the community. And there is a daycare centre, there is a meal service, there's a befriending service, there's so much. And now they are expanding into home care domiciliary, because there's obviously nobody wants to go into care homes anymore. There's that fear factor surrounding care homes, and people tend to serve better when they go home and feel better when they go home, rather than being shunted on a COVID bed left, right and centre. So there is going to be an expansion to home care and domiciliary, and it's really exciting. And it's a brand new role. So I'm very excited with what's to come.
Well, a huge congratulations, Dawn. They've snapped up a fantastic manager, and we can't wait to see what you achieve there.
Thank you very much. So it is Facebook official, Mark. I'll screenshot it and send it.
Please do. I'll share it wide and share it far.
So, Dawn, do you want to introduce tonight's guest and what we're talking about?
I would love to. So this evening, I'm so excited. We have the amazing Dr. Jane Mullins, who is the author of Finding the Light in Dementia. So not only has she written this amazing book that I love, but she's also developed a training program for care staff. It's more of a supportive network. So if we bring in Jane, and she can tell us more.
Hiya.
Hiya, Jane.
Hello, well, thank you for having me. Firstly, can I just say my heart goes out to all of you care staff and managers working under such horrendous conditions. I used to be a care manager a long time ago, so I cannot even begin to imagine what you're going through, actually. But partly one of the reasons I'm here, I suppose. But yeah, I just think you're all doing a phenomenal job. Really do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Jane, Finding the Light. What's it about? What's your background first, before we get into the book? What's your background?
Okay. Well, I've been around a long time. About 1985, 86, I started my nurse training, and we trained in those days. But in between my training, I worked as a care assistant in a local nursing home. This was before the Women's Care Act, so it was mainly nursing separate homes, really. And sort of throughout holidays, various times I sort of worked as a care assistant. And then when I qualified as a nurse, I often worked in there as a staff nurse for extra, I was working in the hospital as well. But like you, I was part of the local community. It was a local nursing home. We knew most of the residents, everybody knew each other. So, and then later on, I went to manage it. Not later on then. In between, doing all sorts of other hospital work. I worked in ICU and primary care for a while. And then I went and did my nursing degree because I just wanted to sort of look at things in a broader view. So I learned a lot about psychology, sociology, sort of looked at things around, and I've always been one to advocate care. Got a bit sick of how nursing became very much the extended role of the nurse, so we became like junior doctors. Whereas I trained to care ultimately. And so got my nursing degree, and then I have worked in 2 memory clinics, one in Bath and one in Cardiff here. And that's where I help to support people through their diagnosis. And I mean, that was sort of mid-90s. I was in the Bath Memory Clinic, so I've seen a lot of change over the years, and we've learned more and more around diagnosis. But I also worked on the clinical trials for some of the drugs that are available now. So supporting people with dementia when we're looking at Aricept, galantamine, and a few of the other drugs that are available for some people now. I worked on all the trials there, so that involved supporting people and having to do these awful cognitive tests with people, which I always try to do as gently as possible, but they're horrible, really, showing people how they do deteriorate and change. But I've just always spent years listening and observing most of the time. I hear people say, talk to patients or talk to residents. And I'm like, no, listen. That's the best thing you can do, actually. And I think that's what I did over the years. And then I've just finished a PhD a couple of years ago, which was exploring how we can communicate with people who have moderate dementia through using the multi-sensory sort of reminiscence way. So we were looking at lovely, enjoyable reminiscences of individualized holidays, and it was with couples. And the results of that were showing how we could rekindle the couplehood, where the one person is often the carer, and very sort of over time, don't like to use this word, but shattered and burdened a bit. But through this lovely approach, I managed to get them back together a bit, and help the person with dementia to stimulate their communication more as well. So at the moment, I'm working in Swansea Uni on trying to get some funding to do more work on that. And I suppose the book came, I just started writing a blog, and then a few people said, well, why don't you turn it into a book? So that wasn't as easy. It wasn't as easy as I thought, you think, oh, put it all together, great. But everything I've always done, and with the training as well, I'm always listening to people who have dementia. I'm always listening to families, carers, care staff, and also professionals and other researchers, because that's what all research now involved in dementia care is all very much about the people who are at the heart of the research, and they're at the heart of the planning of what research is done. So I've seen massive changes since the 80s, really, for the good, apart from what's probably going.
So, forgive me, which came first, the book or the training?
The book.
The book.
I did start. I used to teach health and social care for a few years, and I've always, throughout my whole career, I've always supported staff because I know how difficult it's been, and I've been at the receiving end of some quite harsh lack of caring conditions for staff. So I did start off, when I was teaching health and social care, I was developing modules for personal and professional development for our students, and a lot of our students would then go on to work in social care in various roles. So I was very much trying to find out ways of what makes people go into care, trying to work out so that people could understand themselves. Why am I doing this job? So a lot is about your own self-development within. So sort of to cut a long story short, so I started developing the training, but never managed to actually develop it fully. It was always on my memory stick. And then, of course, last year when COVID started and I could start to see what was happening, very concerned about the staff, so well-being, all of that side. So I started then thinking, I've got all these resources, I've got all these contacts, why can't I just bring it all together? And realizing that we can do a lot more online. So then it's sort of, the book sort of was in the middle of all that, really. But yeah, it was I suppose, having a lot of positive feedback from people who have dementia that has really been my driving force.
Well, I know Dawn's absolutely besotted with this book, absolutely besotted. So I know she's got 1,000 questions, and I also want to ask, while Dawn's asking questions, just what the meaning behind Finding the Light is as well. But Dawn is well into this book, so Dawn, what do you think?
No, that is actually one of my questions. So where did the title come from?
Well, I suppose in a way, a lot of what I try to do is always try to find a positive. I always do in life anyway. I'm quite a spiritual soul, actually, over the years. And I think I've heard some such terrible stories, and I know there are ways that we can actually help people and care staff as well. So it's a two-way thing. It just sort of evolved, really. Over time. It's nothing very exciting and groundbreaking, I'm afraid, Dawn. I suppose, if I'm honest, my husband came up with the title, actually. Let's be honest, yeah, because he's always been a great support, and my kids have, and and then the sort of whole idea of the it is about trying to find the light, really, because there are so many myths around dementia, and speaking with my colleagues who have dementia, who should be with me today, actually, they all love the whole, dare I call it, brand, but that whole idea of let's really bust some of these myths about dementia. Let's find that light in there. I mean, I do get some people's comments saying there is no light. And I think that their experience has probably shown that. And, that's really hard, and it's a horrendous condition, let's face it. But what I'm trying to do is offer ways to help people understand. If you can understand how the condition affects a person, you're halfway there then to working out what you can do to help them, really.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's very much like the whole living well with dementia ethos as well, because we can't live well with dementia, and it's that, I've got family members who are currently going through dementia, who are living with dementia, and are living as well as they possibly can do. And we do try and find the positives. It's everyone's experience is relative, isn't it? So it's about being understanding to what people have experienced. But I'm a firm believer that everything has a positive side, no matter how dark or how sad or how forlorn it might make you feel. There is a positive in everything, and it's trying to embrace that and keep that positive mentality. So really interesting to know that's why it was titled. But like I say, Dawn's read more of this book than I have. So
I think there's a really good point you've made there, Adam, because the people that have really helped contribute to the training who have dementia are part of the DEEP program there, the Dementia Engagement and Empowerment program. They're phenomenal. And most of them have the same experience of having the most horrific experience of having their diagnosis. And I am really appalled when I've heard some of their stories. Where they're just left, and then will go into some deep depression. But every single one of them somehow managed to dig themselves out of that and are determined that other people aren't going to go through what they've gone through. So they're phenomenal. They really inspire me, really do. And so I suppose my training gives them their voice a lot, because they're in a lot of the materials that I'm providing really through films.
I think that's one thing that I really like about the book and in your website, is that it's not just for relatives or for care staff, it's for everyone. And that kind of, I'm sure when you're training people, you can use real life experiences, and then the more you learn from doing the training, the more you can cascade that down to one of the other sides. And I think I've started reading the book, and I just think it's just such an easy read. I think they're short, easy to digest chapters. It's very compassionate. And when we put out on social media that we were obviously having you on the show, I was contacted by somebody called Emily, and I don't know anything else other than that she was a student nurse doing a placement, and she read your book, and she asked that I just inform people doing nursing that she highly recommended this book, because she said that she found it really insightful. So I told her that I would pass that on. But yeah, I think we were talking before you came on, and we all agreed that it's just you can feel the personal element of it. It's very compassionate to read, and it is really insightful. And Jane hasn't paid me to plug this. It is a really good book, so I would definitely recommend it.
Not yet, anyway. Well, again, I think though I have spent so long listening and watching and observing. When I worked in the memory clinic, I was very fortunate to work on a one-to-one basis with people. So people who we were giving their diagnosis to, and you got to know them very well over the years, and then you'd see their partners or family members separately and then together. So I just sort of gleaned. And then I started realizing there are sort of common strands of the issues that are really affecting people. And then going back, I suppose, to writing it in an easy to read, that's because people have, when you are so stressed, you cannot be constant, your concentration goes, or when you're shattered. So family members and care staff, you're all exhausted, aren't you? Do you really, the last thing you want to do is be reading some heavy going book. But I also, it was about sort of bite-sized chunks of what people can digest at the time, and other little stories in there from other people. So I just feel like I'm a conduit for all who I've been working with for all these years and researching with, and it's all coming out this way, really. So I give credit to, everyone that I've worked with all these years.
And I think that brings a level of trust, though, as well. So you go into something like this thinking, they're never going to know what I'm going through, But I'm the only person in the world going through this. I'm the only person feeling like this. There's no way someone can write about something and I relate to it. But the fact that it is so honest and written as a person is the fact that, I mean, I've not read it all myself. I've read a couple of pages, if I'm completely honest. I have been so busy, Jane, so I do apologise. But it's not a passive book.
I understand.
Yeah, but it's not a passive book. So for anyone who's not had it, it's an active book. It's borderline like a self-help diary as well. So you're reading a chapter and then it's like, well, now make some notes. What does matter to your loved one? And you can jot this down, and it allows that thought process to be a learning one as well as just trying to assimilate the knowledge. So I find that an absolutely interesting approach to educate people about it, to guide them through.
Well, that came from I did as a research nurse. You see, for a long time, you often end up moving around quite a lot because it's all it's all contractual work. So at one point, I did work for 2 years on a few studies in the epilepsy unit in the Heath Hospital in Cardiff, and we were looking at information giving. And again, all my work is around communication, and the amount of poor examples of giving information to people who are very stressed in hospital, where there is something that we know in psychology called the primacy recency theory, so that people will remember what you say at the beginning and what you say at the end, but might forget everything else in the middle. So it's all that knowledge we need to know when we're giving information, and we're checking, is anyone understanding this? So we were doing a study looking at creating a sheet that people could write in before they go to clinic when they've had their first major fit, because they must be massively stressed. And you forget. And I know that. I've been in a position, I've had two very ill children, actually. I'm fine now, thankfully, but I've been on the receiving end of some very stressful times. And you don't take anything in. You don't take anything in from doctors, nurses, anyone. They could be just talking in another language. So all those experiences have sort of come into this, and that at least then maybe, you could take the book to the doctors and you can write down, or get someone to write down what they're saying. It's an aid memoir. Or you can write down sort of notes about how your loved one, what works, what doesn't work at that moment in time, because things change. And then if they have a carer coming in, or a befriender or anyone, they've got that. It's like the difficulty is care plans. They're very long-winded, aren't they? We want something quite quick. I still think we should be filming care plans and using film a lot more in how we can communicate things, would be much quicker. But yeah, it's around that. You've got ownership then of that book and how you use it, really. So yeah, so it's sort of got a multiple sort of use, really. So.
Yeah, and I use those sections as well, I have to say, with the care staff who I've worked with. And especially in chapter 5, me and Mark were talking about chapter 5 before we came live on air, about creating a calm, safe home. And that massively resonated with me in the care home environment, because people were, and I'll be honest with you, people were coming in during the pandemic, and they were coming from hospital and not realising they were even coming to us. They were pulling up at some points and not realising, or their family didn't know. And it was creating that calm environment. So, and I used a lot of chapter 5 to be able to enable those who were coming into us with the care team. They may not have realised the tool they were using, but they were using it to jot down notes about where they would first go when they'd walk into a room. Would they check where the bathroom was? Simple things like, we had a couple of smokers, and a couple of the carers said, put water in the bottom of the ashtray. Outside, even though they were outside, but it was that kind of
it helps people. Yeah, and it does help other people. I really do believe that when you're a carer, you're quite a creative soul, and I don't think many people realise that actually you've got to be very creative when you're. So already, I hope that has generated other thoughts and ideas. So exactly that's part of the training. That's one of the modules, is all about creating a calm, safe place. And I have a lot of people who have quite sort of moderate dementia now, different types of dementia, all being interviewed around the fact that they need quiet, they need calm. And it's hard, because I know, it's chaos, isn't it, sometimes? And it's, the noise level, all of those things. It's a real challenge. It is a real challenge to do it well. And we won't always do it right, and we won't always do it well. And I think it's realizing that if we can all support each other, then, we're all got one main aim of trying to make, whether it's home or whether it's domiciliary care, that person feel as well and hopefully as content as possible. Then, then.
So we adapted it. So we were really lucky. So we adapted that for us. And I also have adapted it and used the final chapter about looking for somewhere for care or respite in order to hand that information over to family to ensure that it was from their person-centered, from their point of view. And that was a really useful tool for me as well. But tell us about the training. So has this developed on from the book, or?
Well, it's only sort of, I've been working my socks off, to be honest, because I'm also working in Swansea Uni. So I've been doing this in the evenings with an amazing friend, Tom Tremaine. I've got to give him a shout out. He's a filmmaker. And so basically the training consists of 6 modules. The first one is understanding dementia. So it's all about what is dementia, what are the different types, how do they affect people in different ways. Also is a little bit about how our brain works. It's nothing too complex, but I do feel that we need to know a little bit of how our brain works so that when it does go wrong, we can understand what the person's going through a bit more. And then we talk a lot, there's about dignity. So everybody in the training, all my colleagues who have dementia and other professionals, they're all being interviewed about what they think dignity is and how we can deliver dignified care. So the training it's very much a lot of films, podcasts, animations. It's I've done a lot of training that's very boring and oh God, and you just forget most of it by the time you've gone home that day. But this is more living, breathing. It's alive, this training, and it's more real world. And I think you are more likely to, if you want to use the word sustainable, but you're more likely to remember a lot of things. I've got a little podcast. We've got a carer who works in a care home, and she's reads out quite a few of the little stories of what her experiences are and how important they are in terms of understanding someone's life story. So and how the person may present. There's a story, put it this way, where there was a resident came into their home. And nobody knew anything about him at all because his daughter was still out in Australia, quite a few years ago. And he was rushed in from hospital for some reason to this care home. And nobody knew anything about him at all. And he couldn't communicate because of his dementia. And he was also very stressed, coming to this strange place. And at tea time, he would just erupt into a violent rage. And it turns out, they found out not long later when his daughter came over, that he had actually been in a prisoner of war in a tea plantation out in Burma. And most of his friends had died. He was one of the only ones that survived. He was tortured. And when he came home, he never really talked about it at all. And so once they worked out what was going on, he vowed he would never drink a cup of tea ever again. And of course, he was then in a home, locked in, as it was at the time. So he was taken right back, that emotion, he was taken right back to that time. And he was fighting back, and he was being offered tea. So, and it was about, once the staff understood that, they could work with him, and then they found out more about his other aspects of his life. He was a keen footballer, so they worked with that. So if someone does have a trauma that you know about, you need to really be aware of that in their care. So in the training, the carer it's a little podcast, and she tells it as a story. So it's really quite powerful. She tells it far better than I do, actually. She's, but it's those little snippets that people won't forget. Those stories all along. I've got loads from. I used to, when I worked in the nursing home, we had an old chap who had dementia, and somehow he ended up with a plough walking frame, like Zimmer. It was in the shape of a plough. Don't know how he ended up with that one, but it turned out he was a farmer in Gower. I'm from South Wales, Gower, beautiful peninsula by the sea, and he was a Gower farmer. So I learnt loads. I used to walk around the garden with him with his plough, and I understand what the words are now. I didn't then. I didn't have a clue, but it's we talk about embodiment and muscle memory and you know, and it was wonderful because he was quite happy. His body was so used to doing those movements, you know, so there's an awful lot around there. I've gone totally off pat anyway. But yeah, the training, 6 modules, communication is the second one. Memory is the next, but memory isn't the major issue often in dementia, not for a long time for some people. For Alzheimer's disease it is, possibly, but not always. And then calm, safe place. So we're looking at all environmental side of things. And I'm forgetting what the other... Oh yes, emotions, perceptions, and responses. So I'm changing all the language. I'm not having challenging behavior. A lot throughout the training is we're going to talk about language, big thing, because we can end up discriminating, stereotyping. Today I was just talking to someone now who's got frontotemporal dementia. He's only my age. And he said, can you just tell people I'm not a sufferer? And I was like, yeah, exactly. People don't want the word sufferer. So it's all those things. And language really is the starting point of where our attitudes lie. So, and then the last module is called I Am Still Me, which is the theme throughout the whole of the training. But it's about how can we help a person still be who they are. And there's a lot around personal care in that way. So within it as well, I've interviewed a lot of researchers who are doing all the latest work in terms of clothing. Clothing has a huge impact on people. Who else? Oh, I've interviewed so many people now, so many professionals who've worked within, you know, the sort of research. I'm drying up now, sorry. So yeah, it's all their voices of all the latest work of what they're doing. I've got Professor Suzanne Reeves, who is a consultant psychiatrist in the University College London, who has done an awful lot of research about agitation and how we can help reduce agitation in people who have perhaps some of the rarer forms of dementia. So yeah, so it's massive, and I'm making it really affordable because it can be on this platform. It's for everyone. That's my feeling, because I just feel when I first started out thinking about this, I came across quite a few care providers, owners who didn't want to pay much for training at all. And I understand, you know, there's a big turnover in some places, and I understand that. So I thought, how can I make this so that people can afford this, really? So, but on top of that, there's a wellbeing hub for the staff, so they can do the training and then they can puttle into the wellbeing hub, which it's ongoing. We're adding to it all the time. I've collaborated with Dr. John Wilson, who is a grief and bereavement specialist. He's the director of York University Bereavement Services. And there are sort of links to some of his short courses that might help people, because the multiple bereavements, and, you know, I know from when I started nursing, nobody gave us any support about, you know, when you're helping, you know, sort of support somebody through their end of life and all of that. You just had to get on with it, you know, and I grew up in that be stoical, but actually you need some support. You need some, you know, around, especially with what's been going on over the last 18 months. So there's all sorts of lovely resources on there, videos of meditation, different things as well. So.
And I definitely think this idea that the training is available and accessible to everyone is a wonderful idea. But I just want to posit this, that actually it's, you know, for people in social care, we probably have some sort of foundation of knowledge. We have some sort of understanding. We've all done dementia training. Stuff like this, people who are taxi drivers, who work in shops, who work at libraries, who work anywhere where they are working with the public, I personally feel need to go under some sort of dementia understanding training, because there are so many instances where I've been out in the public and I've seen people who clearly living with dementia, and the services that they're utilising have no idea how to handle it. And it's really something that I think this is something the government should be doing. You know, forget sorting out the petrol stations, because we should be able to sort that out ourselves. You know, we're a civilized society apparently, but I think there really should be a push for making dementia training a standard requirement for all public services, where they are dealing with the public, because even just walking up to a doormat and seeing a massive black doormat, if you've not got perception and then the rest of the floor is white, that's a hole. You know, and it's little things like this. So I think the fact that this is affordable and is so accessible, and I will say again, trustworthy, because it is so honest and true, I think is fantastic. So if you're watching this and you're not part of the social care sector, A, why not? Because social care sector is fantastic. But B, do some dementia training. You know, there are multiple resources out there. This is probably one of the best and probably one of the most useful, because also comes with a book, which you can find on Amazon. But I think
it's the voices of the people. It's the voices of the people who have dementia that are make up this training. Really,
yeah,
that's what's powerful. Is, you know. So, and sorry, I interrupted you, Adam. But I know in where we are in Cardiff, some of the Deep Network have been training the ambulance crews, which is vital, absolutely vital, because especially, you know, people, they're going to come across people with delirium, you know, all sorts of difficulties, and actually you can really make or break a situation very quickly with someone who is becoming increasingly confused and increasingly distressed, and usually, rightly so, people end up being distressed, rightly so. More often than not, my experience is that people get agitated because of their environments and because of how they're treated and not understood. So that's a big part of my work, is helping us and trying to understand what's going on there. So it makes your life so much easier, you know. And it's all about the joyful, because working with people with dementia, I love, because you have to be creative. You wax and wane with people's moods. There's no hard and fast rules as such. So you've got to be creative. So.
I mean, we always try and be creative in our approach to dementia. And I remember I went to this conference once, and they were like, you know, and if you photocopy money and you can use it as like, because you know, a lot of people at lunchtimes especially is like, well, how much is dinner? And they go, oh, no, it's free, and they can't understand it. So giving them money to be to be able to use, just make sure you don't use a printer connected to the internet, because mine was telling me I was breaking the law. Once I started trying to photocopy it, it was like, you're photocopying something you shouldn't be doing.
I tried to do that for someone once, and I couldn't work out why the paper was just coming out black. So why? It's a £10 note. I don't get it. Why?
Money, license to print money, isn't it?
Our photocopier wasn't that good though. But still, yeah, I couldn't work out at the time why.
So I think one of the only questions that I've got left, because I know Dawn and Mark will have loads, is you said at the beginning, you know, obviously 86 you started nurse training, and in the 90s you were working with the dementia. What do you think's been the biggest change to the approach of not only diagnosing dementia, but the perception of dementia? Because I know in the last 10 years that I've been at my current place, and in the years before that when I was in social care, not as a manager, the perception of dementia has changed drastically. So what do you think over the last sort of 20, 30 years has changed the most?
Well, I think the Community Care Act was a good thing. So the asylums shut down, because some of the people I know now would be sitting in an asylum. And actually, I interviewed Professor John Keedy, who's a mental health nurse, who started working in this field a few years before me. I mean, he's the big cheese. He's an amazing guy. And he talks about this, that, you know, staff were punished to go to what was called the dementia wards. So I think the fact that, you know, as with anyone that was locked away because they didn't quite conform to social norms, you know, I think that's got to have been a good thing. Stigma is still there, though, very much. The experiences that I'm hearing from most of the people I know. But I would say in probably the last 10 years is the dementia activism that's going on with the people who have dementia themselves. They've been tireless in actually trying to change attitudes and, you know, and actually informing policy now as well. So I would say they've probably worked harder than anyone else. And the fact that any research now and any sort of service or development, the person who, you know, people who have dementia have to be at the heart of that. So I think that's probably, you know, all the co-production side of things in the last 10 years. So it's a combination of things, really.
Co-production, Dawn, co-production.
Oh, yeah. It's been doing it all my life, but suddenly it's a buzzword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is for me now. Yeah. I love that.
Oh
word.
yes,
So,
yeah.
since you've written the book, what has the response been from people's families, for example? Is it families that utilise it more? Is it partners? Is it daughters, sons? Is it care homes? Is it care staff? Where have you seen most of the outreach from?
Mostly families, mostly daughters, which is classic. My experience of the memory clinic, it was always the daughters that were, trying to, get some support. So yes, partners, particularly, mainly female, but again, that does tend to go with the statistics of sometimes there are gender roles in how people do access services and that side of things. And I've been lucky. I have had all pretty positive comments from it, and it just feels lovely to think that even if it can make one little difference to somebody, it's doing something. But I think as well, like I said earlier, because it makes people think about what's happening, they can start thinking of their own ideas of what they could do as well as the suggestions in the book. So, so like what people can and cannot see. Again, that whole idea of, somebody, we have this thing called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, where some people might see something really far away and it's close to them. It's all visual perceptual side of things. But I didn't know about that when I was first working in the nursing home all those years ago. I didn't know. So I wish I'd known what I know now, really,
Patterned carpets. Patterned carpets.
Yeah, patterned carpets, terrible things. Yeah.
Because it's littered to them. It's things on the floor that people want to pick up. Perception, it affects. So
it's all this
amazing.
lovely library wallpaper you see all over care homes at the moment of books.
Yes.
And then they wonder why it's torn off. Because everybody's trying to get the books off the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. All very pastiche and but yeah, it's understanding what people see, and I talk a lot with one particular person, Andy. I will say his name is wonderful, Andy. He has Lewy body dementia, and he experiences all sorts of hallucinations, particularly olfactory ones with smells. And he actually can be physically sick with the hallucinations that he smells. So I'm learning all the time. But you never stop learning. I mean, I did once when I was working in a care home. At one point, somebody said, "Oh, I've done dementia. I've done all the training. I knows it all." I was like, "Oh, right, okay, great." I thought, tell me, because you never stop learning. You never stop learning. So I suppose that's my one big message: is find out as much as you can, and find out from the people who are experiencing it.
So my final question is, I love the section in the book that has the guide for hospital admissions, because I think quite often in social care we all talk about the reg bag for hospitals or what to take, and we never actually think about the communication and the handover between the care service provider and the hospital team of what somebody on a good day would present like and be like and what they like. And I really like the bit at the back of the book where you can take that or use it and give it to the hospital, which got me thinking about like good tips. I was going to say your top 3, but I don't want to put you on the spot. So what would be your number 1 tip for somebody, or from the book or from your training, that people really take away? I know I put you on the spot there. Oh, Adam, you're on.
I think we've frozen.
Yeah, I think Jane's frozen. Either that or she didn't like my question and she ran away.
You'll see the cat walk past her in a minute.
I was just about to say it's awful being frozen, but you do it sometimes.
I thought maybe she was thinking, but no. Oh, she's no. Oh, you're back. You're back.
We're back.
Was it me? I thought it was all of you.
I thought you didn't like my question, Jane. I thought you'd left.
It was good timing, wasn't it? That's my boys on their Xboxes. That's the Top tip would be to stop, don't rush, take time, stand back and observe. And I know it's really hard sometimes because we're always doing, and maybe sometimes to realize, you don't always have to do. It's about being with people sometimes. And I know that's really hard. It depends on if you're great managers like you guys are, realizing that sometimes we don't have to do all these tasks. It's about, trying to force or rush people with personal care. You can't rush people who have dementia. Their brains they've slowed down. They take longer to process anything. So, yeah, so that's another tip, I suppose. And the last one is know as much as you can about their life story. Just think about if that was you, when you couldn't communicate, what would you want them to know about you?
Yeah. When I first started in care, I met this chap that I was supporting, and he was telling me everything about him, how he used to fly Spitfires and everything like that. And a nurse call buzzer went, and I said, I'm really sorry, I'll come back and I'll listen to the rest of your story. And with that, he picked up his walking stick and cracked me on the head. And he said, it's not an expletive story, it's my life. And that was my minute when I just went, oh, this is what social care is. It's lives. And, I was 18 at the time, still deciding what I wanted to do. And that was like a huge wow, actually. These people come with a wealth of years of experience in daughters and grandchildren and grandsons and pets and jobs. And it's about embracing that and getting to know them, isn't it? It's a wonderful thing that we do. And it's an honour that we get to be involved in this. And I don't know whether Jane's gone all Elsa and Frozen again. It's to boot them off their Xboxes.
I think I'm going to have. Sorry about this. I stepped up there to be quiet. I was just about to scream up the stairs. I thought, you'll hear my lovely Welsh dulcet tones.
Don't worry about it at all. Don't worry about it. So, yeah, it is that importance of getting to know these people as people. And language culture is such a huge thing nowadays, because you go to a meeting and they'll go, I don't know whether you call them residents or service users, and the majority of the time we don't call them people, because they are people.
I hate the term service user. I've got to say, it sounds horrible. They're not patients unless they're ill.
Clients, customers.
Oh, I hate that as well. They're people, aren't they? Yeah. We. And one thing I will get across as well in the training, I have films with people who have dementia and people who don't, because I'm trying to get away from that us and them, that whole us and them thing very much. So it's another big thing.
I think going back to what we were discussing about, once you've listened to somebody's life stories, then making sure it's documented. And I think even for the person, the amount of times I can recall having conversations about end of life care with somebody, and then when it gets to that moment in their life, then having to recall all of that to family or whoever's arranging the funeral, and actually having that written down is just it's such a useful tool for families to say, look, I know it's obviously it's very fresh, but actually we've got all the personal bits and pieces that actually your father, your uncle, your husband, whoever it is, wanted, and whether you want to honour those wishes or not, but actually here's what he told us or she told us that they wanted at the time, and they can just take that away. And I know the feedback from that is, I think sometimes you learn a lot from people, don't you? They don't necessarily tell their families or their friends what they actually want.
And I do wonder whether, I was talking to a care manager the other day, because we're piloting the training at the moment with them, and I sort of suggested, and we have to think about ethics a bit, but in some ways, if you could film the person with their permission or their family or advocate, that sometimes you can glean so much more from what a person's saying than if it's written down. I do think as time goes on, it's like I'm looking at the films I've created or Tom's created with people I know, and I think I would like to actually perhaps give them to their families then, because we've got them in that moment in time. And the sad thing is they are going to at some point.
I love the idea of using videos as well, because I think as well, if they're giving you a viewpoint that the family think, oh, actually, no, they would never have wanted that. Well, actually, it's not just on paper and pen. Nobody could have just, you can actually see that person saying that.
Yeah.
Because so many times somebody would say to us they wanted to be cremated, and the family would be like, no, they always wanted to be buried. And it was always that, well, here's what they told us. But yeah, so yeah, I really like that idea.
And that's something we should all be doing, really, isn't it? You never know what's around the corner.
No, it's like a little time capsule of information.
Yeah, it's your digital history, isn't it, or whatever. We're so used to being on all of this, a lot of us now, isn't it? So yeah. So that whole a part of what I do in the training is that there are activities to do, and those activities are very much self-development. So part of that is creating your own life story. So if you want, you know, you're going to sort of look at that for one of the people you're looking after. Well, if you do it for yourself first, you'll understand why that's quite important, and you'll understand what aspects are important. So that's a big part of the training, is the activities are very much, you're going to do things with you and your colleagues and your buddies or whoever, that you will then be expected to be doing when you're not doing, when you're caring with. I like to say caring with and not for as well.
Yeah.
Another language.
Caring, it's amazing how much language culture changes and how easy we are to accept it, because we're like, oh, I care for, and we've actually started moving away from the word care and supported too. You know, oh, are you feeding such and such at dinner? No, I'm supporting them to have their lunch. That's what I'm doing.
I hate that term.
Yeah, and we've got to be careful to a point that we don't infantilize people as well. Because although some people do regress and do enjoy those soft toys and they do enjoy the bright colours, infantilization isn't a one-stop approach, isn't it? It's not something you can do for everyone. Beakers are one of my biggest bugbears, because not everyone needs to drink from a beaker. You know, there are many adaptations out there that are more dignified nowadays, and it's about promoting that dignity. And when you were talking about washing and helping people to get washed and dressed in the morning, you know, it's not only just about not rushing them, but the amount of times I've seen care team members in the past just go with the tops and put them on, and they've no idea what they're doing, whether they're coming left or right. It's communication.
Can I just also throw one thing in here as well? I'm working with Mohammed Rauf at Meri Yadan in Bradford to make sure the training is culturally sensitive. And he was telling me that people of his parents' generation, first generation immigrants that came over from Pakistan, they would never go in a bath. They would never go in a bath because they associate bathing with the cow in the road at home back in Pakistan, and they see that as dirty. So this knowledge is so important that if you have somebody who's older or has dementia and they're from that heritage, what do you think is going to happen if you try to get that person in the bath? So again, we're trying to bring that cultural sensitivity into the life story side of things as well. It's hugely important.
Yeah, it's a can that once opened, you can't stop, can you? There's just so many things to consider. I think and Dawn's our resident dementia expert in the Care Review. Dawn's absolutely mad on dementia. So have you got everything you need from tonight, Dawn? Have you got any more questions before we disappear?
No, I don't think so. Jane's followed me on Twitter now, so I have this personal little Twitter account.
Well, look, I'm always around.
So I could just keep going backwards and forwards.
Not a stalk me though, don't you?
No. I didn't even do that with Caroline Abrahams in respect of her. What was it? Was it an OBE or an MBE?
MBE.
Or MBE. Yeah. So no, I didn't even go that far then. So no, you're all right. But
that's
no,
Caroline blocked her before she had a chance.
Sorry?
I said that's because Caroline blocked her before she had a chance.
No, she didn't.
Dawn's still waiting for the invite to go and collect the award.
I'll still go for it. That's not a problem.
Well, look, Jane, honestly, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, I think what you guys are doing amazing.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. And I can't imagine you'll be a stranger, because we do want to do some more dementia-focused episodes in the future. And because it is such a wide topic, we may try and do some episodes that are more specific, more focused, so that we can really get to the nitty-gritty of things. And as an expert in the field, I'm sure we'll extend an invitation for you to come back if you'd be willing to.
I'm not an expert. I'll bring in some people from Deep. They're the experts because they have the experience of living with it. So
yes, wonderful.
Good.
So another week, another episode. Episode 25 are we on now, excluding the extras. So we've only got, I'm terrible at math, 27, and we've done a full year. We've got some exciting things coming up. We are going to try and put a bit of a competition on for Halloween. We've got a bit of a poem competition coming. So whether you're utilising services, whether you run services, whether you want to write a poem, speak a poem, sing a poem, we are going to put a bit of a poem competition on, and we have got some fun Halloween festive themed activities to go on some of our episodes moving forwards. So from all of us here for tonight, it's a goodbye and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Jane. See you guys later.
Thank you. Take care, all.
Thank you again for joining us tonight on The Caring View. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and whilst you're here, check out some of the other videos that we've got up online. If you've got something that you think may be interesting for us to discuss, or if you want to guest spot with us, then drop us an email to thecaringview@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook. All the information is down there in the description box. But until then, have a good evening, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.